been 15 public hearings, 15 or 16. In addition to the 16 public hearings, 15 or 16 public hearings, the task force asked a bunch of community organizations, ours is one of them, to go out and do stuff like this. Go to Black-owned businesses, go to our community centers, go to our neighborhood parks, etc. Go wherever we can to educate the people about what's going on. And we've been working on this with a bunch of other organizations really for the past couple of years. I think last year we probably did about 20 different reparations events. We did 2 here just in DRIP last year. We did, we're probably closing in on maybe 15, 20 so far this year already. This is one of them. We're all volunteers. We're not getting paid. We just out here trying to make sure that we give reparations. So, just want to give you some background there. That is all I'm gonna say for the basics. I'm gonna pause here. What I want to do is take a quick 2-3 minute break. If you want to get something from our good friends here at DRIP, please do. If you need to use the restroom, please do. And then we're gonna go right to Q&A after that. Okay? Your questions about what we discussed so far, and even some stuff that we haven't. If you have questions about stuff you've seen on Instagram or in the media, somewhere, happy to answer those too. So I'll start taking questions. Hand up, and I'll come back to you. Sir.
What's the next step?
So the question is, what's the next step? Okay. What's the next? So what happens after the task force is finished? This team of people is finished on July 1st. What happens next? Okay? So what happens next is the plan that they finish and they put out has to be made into law. Has to actually become law. Has to become actual law. Okay?
So that means Gavin Newsom has to sign off on it.
That is generally true. So it would depend on what the task force recommends, but generally yes, there will be a law that will be drafted. Not just the governor, Gavin Newsom, but the state senate, the state assembly, and the governor will have to say yes to what the plan is. Okay? I have something I call the reparations equation. The reparations equation. 21 plus 41 plus 1. 21 plus 41 plus 1.
62
equals reparations. Okay? You need 21 senators
41.
to say yes. You need 41 assembly members to say yes. And you need 1 governor to say yes. Okay?
Well, how many on board thus far? Y'all take it down.
So,
That's the question.
and so the question is, well, how many do we have right now? How many? And before I answer that, I want to answer something that is in between that, which is, what's the timeline? How long is this going to take, right? So we spent 2 years creating a reparations plan, doing a task force, all that good stuff. Good, right? Studying, developing a plan, all that, good. But what is the timeline from here now until you actually get
in your bank.
something to answer on, right? Right. Something tangible. So every year there is a deadline after which you can't do no new laws. Every year there's a deadline after which you can't do no new laws. That's usually like February every year. So the reparations task force, the reparations team is going to put out their plan, finish their plan by July 1st. That means the earliest we could see a reparations bill to become law is either at the earliest late this year, at the latest February of next year. So I expect between December of this year and February of 2024, February of next year, you and me will see what will be a reparations bill. That bill has to become law. I don't want to go through the whole how does that happen, but generally speaking, the bill will have to go through the political process early next year on its way to the governor's desk. That means all of the senators are going to be able to see the bill. All of the assembly members are going to be able to see the bill. They're going to have their thoughts on it. It's going to go through different committees. It's going to go through different parts of the process. on its way to getting 21 senators to say yes, 41 assembly members to say yes, and 1 governor to say yes. When is the earliest, and I'm gonna get to your question, when is the earliest we could see a reparations law actually passed, signed? So, the earliest, no later than the summer of 2024. Okay? That's if we are successful. That's when we are successful. Summertime 2024. The governor usually has until like late summer to
So
sign
there's an
it.
election in between that time, is that right?
Next
That's what
year,
we're getting to?
that's a good point.
That's what he wants.
Next year isn't election year, right? So next year is election year.
So our vote before we get our attention.
Well, I
Not for
think
him,
the
not
election
the
is
governor.
after the deadline for him to sign it. So to be honest with you, this is a real opportunity for us
Okay.
to say,
Okay.
listen, if you want our votes,
Right, real talk. So at the task force, they said that all the verbiage in the final draft of what they're talking about, all of that matters. And that the governor or whoever that they present this to could say, no, the verbiage isn't right. Or if they're, if they're inclusive or uninclusive or not specific to our lineage, then it can be rejected.
that's a good point. And so what the sister is saying is, and this is important for everybody to understand too. The task force is gonna release their plan literally in the next 6 weeks or so. Okay? That plan goes to the state senate, as we said, the state assembly, as we said.
Write that down.
It's going to become a bill. That means that the state senators and the state assembly people and the governor will have a say in, well, I like that, I don't like that, I want that, I don't want that, I could support that, I don't support that, or I will support that if, or I won't support that if. What our work is, and part of our work now, is to make sure that we get the strongest, best bill based on the plan that the task force creates. The task force has created a pretty strong plan. The task force has said who's eligible. The task force has said what folks generally will be eligible for, specifically, right. And part of our job between now and when we see the bill is to make sure that the state senators who are going to be introducing the bills, the state assembly people who are going to be introducing the bills, make the bill the strongest possible, so that way we get the strongest bill possible. I don't want to complicate it too much, but there's important steps that are happening there. Right now, we are getting ready to see the final thing, even though we know what it's going to look like, generally speaking. There's a point between now and when we see the bill, so basically the rest of the year, where we got to make sure that what's in the bill is the strongest and what we actually want and what the task force wants. We don't want them to start to take stuff away. Right? There's something that I hope I'm pretty sure somebody's gonna ask me about what the governor was talking about.
Yes, I'm about to.
Because the governor been in the news over the past, right?
It's more than cash.
Right on. So I want to get to that, but the idea is that we want to make sure that what we want is in the bill and what the task force asked for is in the actual bill. That's part of our work between now and when we see the bill. When we see the bill, it's going to be our job to make sure that the bill becomes law. Because generally, what's next?
Who has access to see the bill? When does the general public see actually lay eyes on what they formulate for camera?
So the question is, who will have access to the actual reparations legislation, the actual reparations bill? When will the public get to see it? I think at the earliest, the public will be able to see it in December, the latest February. So between December and February, it will be made public. Who though will see it before it's public? It's the senators and assembly people who are going to be drafting it and putting it together. I'll give you two that I expect to have eyes on it very, very early. Okay. So on your cards, there's two people. There's a Senator Stephen Bradford and Assembly Member Reginald Jones Sawyer. These are two people who are actually on the State Reparations Task Force now.
You said Bradford, who's the other one?
And Jones Sawyer. And these are people who are also in the State Senate and State Assembly.
Okay.
So the most simple thing to do would be for those two people to actually introduce the reparations bills, because they're already there. They're already in the state legislature.
Who was the second?
Jones Sawyer. Bradford and Jones Sawyer.
One of them is against the reparations bill.
Right, sure is.
One of the
You talking about Amos
one of them
Brown?
up in here.
You talking about Amos Brown?
I know they had them on TV.
Amos Brown.
Okay, so
They called it out.
so y'all talking about Reverend Amos Brown, who is a member of the State Reparations Task Force. He's also, and we're going to ask you a couple questions about this soon too. He's also a member of the San Francisco Reparations Task Force. So this is important. The state is doing something, but different cities in the state are saying, well, you know what, maybe we should do something specifically for the city too. So San Francisco is probably the most known one. Los Angeles has its own City of Los Angeles Reparations Task Force. Berkeley is working on one. Alameda County is working on one. Who else? Culver City is working on one. Richmond, Vallejo. And if you've been following the news over the past 6 or so months, Sacramento is now talking about doing something like this too. Just talking. Okay, and part of what
Doing something like what?
create a City of Sacramento Reparations Task Force. Sacramento is now talking about it. Now this is different from what the state is doing.
Okay.
I'm gonna have some questions for y'all about that.
I was just say, do you have any information on the San Francisco one?
Generally speaking, I don't have any specific information other than what's sort of generally known in the public. I know that they did release their draft plan early this year, got a lot of press, and they, I think, are still working on it and refining and putting their stuff together. They don't have anything final yet. Their draft stuff is out though. Now, and this is to the brother's point here, one of the members of the State Reparations Task Force is also on the City of San Francisco Reparations Task Force too. And that is Dr. Reverend Amos Brown, who voted for and has supported what the State Reparations Task Force has been recommending so far. That includes direct compensation.
No, he rejected it after he got $50 million from Wells Fargo.
So you're talking about in San Francisco? Asking about in San Francisco.
No, he got a check, $50 million to reject $5 million for the descendants in San Francisco.
So I will say this too, because I talked to Reverend Brown a couple of weeks ago at the May task force hearings. I talked to Reverend Brown.
What did he say?
He said that one, he is not against. he told me directly, and he told the crowd of people, and it wasn't just me, and he told the entire audience too. He is one, not against direct compensation, not against cash reparation. That's what he told us. One. I want to have it see.
He go back and forth.
Right.
That's what it is. He goes back and forth.
And people were mad at
He
him.
went to Ghana with Kamala Harris.
Kamala Harris, yeah.
And he was her pastor, and so that's that Democrat tie there, and that's why they said Gavin Newsom set him up on the task force.
So Gavin Newsom did pick him, but I'm just telling you what he told me. Telling you what he told me that I'm going to do. So Reverend Brown told me, and by the way, Reverend Brown, let's just give a little bit of background. He was Dr. Martin Luther King's one of Dr. Martin Luther King's literal students. He's one of the 16 people that Dr. Martin Luther King literally touched, literally put his hands on his way to. He was driven to the school by Medgar Evers. Mm-hmm. So Medgar Evers is in the driver's seat. Reverend Brown is in the passenger seat. Okay, and I've learned more about him as I've come here, right? As I've come to California. he told me directly, and he told the group of people directly, that he's not against cash compensation, but, and let's just keep it real, his name is on a statement from the San Francisco NAACP rejecting the $5 million payment that the San Francisco Reparations Task Force recommended. They put out a follow-up clarifying statement though, that sort of talked a little bit more about why they were rejecting that. I think what they were saying was something like there was no way to justify, like how did you come to $5 million was not answered. So they were saying, we don't want you to just come up with a number. We want you to show us how you got to the number, because we're gonna have to defend the number some point later. I'm just saying.
The housing.
I'm about to say, now to me, ain't no number too high, personally.
Right.
For real.
Hey, come on in, come on in. No, you're good. No, you're right on time. To me,
My last time.
right, no worry at all. Don't worry. There's no number too high for me, and I'm telling you, I'm sharing with you what Reverend Brown shared with me. Okay, but there's no, to me, there's no number too high, right? And as we talked about before, here in California or here across the state, how much you will potentially be eligible for will depend on whether or not you hit those two eligibility criteria: the descendant, the residency, and how much you're eligible for will depend on how long you've lived in the state of California. But just wanted to share with you what Dr. Brown shared with me. Feel free to reach directly out to him personally and ask him more questions. And I'm gonna leave it there. Oh, let me get.
Could you be eligible for both California and one of the cities? Or is that like an either or?
Generally, right now, the answer is yes. You can, if you qualify for San Francisco, like one of my partners back there probably does, and potentially too, right? You getting one doesn't keep you out of the other, at least right now. There's something else that we actually had written into the law that created the State Reparations Task Force. Like the last paragraph or two, it says something like, just because California is doing this doesn't mean that the federal national government isn't still responsible for doing what it is responsible to do too. So in addition to not being excluded from the city stuff, you're also not excluded from what the national federal government does too. I mean, my brother here,
Are they gonna have a brother sign a waiver or something if he gets the money to relinquish his rights from federally?
I don't think so.
Because I know it's a catch-22 when you get to playing with these people here.
Potentially.
You sign your rights away like you do a law.
Potentially, it would, and this goes back to the other point that we were saying earlier. It would depend on us making sure that the legislation and the bill is true to what the task force is saying. Because the task force didn't say nothing about, well, if you get San Francisco, you can't get state, or if you get Sacramento, you can't get state, or if you get state, you can't get federal, or if you get federal, you can't get. The task force said everybody who owes gotta pay. Everybody who owes gotta pay. And so that's what the task force said. Let me get my brother. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, man.
Oh.
First off, I'd just like to say that I'm very grateful that you guys started this thing. I'm very grateful for these task force people and all that, because we ain't been getting nothing for all these years. Now, I'm the youngest of 9 kids, and it's only me and my sisters left. Okay, I'm 70 years old. I got over 300 and some nieces and nephews. You know what I mean? And that's why I be calling you. They hear about this and they're like, Uncle Johnny, what's going on? You know, and they depend on Uncle Johnny. You know, because I've been a hustler all my life, and now you know me. You know, so they still Uncle Johnny. So what I need to know, I got my granddad's obituary. Okay, my grandfather was born in 1868. So I know my great-grandparents had to have been slaves.
Yep.
I don't have the hookup on them yet. They're, it's all Louisiana. You know, that's where the roots are in Louisiana. And I'd like to know what and I was born here in California. But I would like to know what qualifies us?
No.
You know, what we need to do.
And so it's the same question that I was speaking
The
to.
census know who
Right.
you are.
And the question is, how do I show that I am eligible, right? What documents do I need? How do I show that I'm eligible? I'm gonna answer that question now, but before I even answer that, I want to say something about what you started with, which is you one of our elders, right? The task force has recommended that the elders get paid first.
Wow.
Okay. The task force has recommended that the elders
She glad you're out there.
first. Okay. All right. So I want to let you know about
They
that.
all gonna be calling you now.
Everybody will go back to
All right. Elders get paid
They're
first.
going down the street.
But to the core of your question, which is a really good question, we were just talking about this. How do I show that I am a descendant of someone who was enslaved in the United States, et cetera, and how do I show the residency too, right? Because that's a part of it too. So the answer is to be determined. Okay. The task force is recommending that the state create something called the California American Freedmen Affairs Agency, and create something called the Office of Genealogy inside of that agency.
Okay.
And that will be the place, among other things, this is actually going to be a really
How is everybody coming this way?
important thing, but that will be the place that will help design what the rules are and the process is for how you show that you're eligible for reparations. So there's no answer to that question yet. Now I think if I was anybody, and I'm doing this myself, I would start talking to my elders. I would start gathering family records. I'm just gonna start getting stuff just in case I need something.
Hold on to that obituary.
Right, please, right.
Yeah,
Hold
I
on.
got it.
Right. Start talking to the elders. Start talking to your.
But the census know who we are. And if your relatives have Negro, like my mother or her mother, both had Negro. First it had Native, then it had Negro, and then it had colored. Okay, so all of those, that's when the census came down and labeled us from Native, which means that we're indigenous to this land. This means that this is our home, right? This is us, all us. So the census know who you are. And they said if you've identified as Black American for the 10 years or better, you are in the lineage, you know, that you're not
In
even
San Francisco, yeah, and this is important too because you raised a good point. The rules about who's eligible are slightly different from the cities to the state. Right? The state is actually a little bit, I think, simpler to understand because San Francisco's is that plus a bunch of other stuff too. And again, they're not finished, but the state is. Are you a descendant? That's 1 foot. Do you have at least 6 months residency? That's the other foot. Both feet are in the door. You can close the door behind you. And then how much, do you, door number 1 in front of you, door number 2 is how much you eligible for. It will depend on how long you live in California. There's one thing I want to say about what you said, because I'm going to come to the questions here, which is, and I got 2 questions in the back too. So, this is important too. How we've been identifying as a people. Right now, the federal government, the state governments, everybody really uses something called Black/African American to describe pretty much all of us in some way, right? But that's not good enough right now. That's not specific enough right now. One of the things so we helped write the final version of the law that created the state reparations task force. We also wrote another piece of legislation that the governor signed last year. By we, I mean CJEC, Coalition for a Just and Equitable California. We wrote a law or a bill that the governor then signed. And it's section 14 of SB 189. Okay, I'm gonna start giving you some numbers. Okay, so right, SB 189. Okay, SB, that's Senate Bill 189, and it's section 14 of SB 189. What that does is. That will, starting in 2024, starting with our state employees first, make California the first state to actually start to collect information, data, specifically ask us, are we descendants of persons enslaved in the United States? Right now, or before this, you couldn't walk down to City Hall, you couldn't walk to the county office, you couldn't walk to the state office and say, just tell me how many people here are descendants of U.S. slavery. There's no data collection at all on us specifically as a group of people. That is a damn, pardon me, shame. Okay, 400 years, the government has not been collecting information specifically on us as a specific group of people. They use the big black or African American category. There's people in there who are descendants of persons enslaved in the United States, 90% of us. There are people in there who are not descendants of persons enslaved in the United States, but who may identify as black or African American too. So,
Like our president, like our former president.
I'm gonna say, the great example, Barack Obama is not a descendant of someone who was enslaved in the United States, right? But he's Kamala Harris is not also, but there are people who identify as black or African American. Now, they would not be eligible for reparations, right? But the problem was that we've been grouped into this big thing, and yes, we are a part of a larger black family too, yes, right, yes, absolutely. But we're also a specific group of people. I would say we are a special group of people.
Say it.
Nobody has done what we've done.
Say it.
Come on, man.
Right,
Nobody.
Right.
Oh,
For real.
Nobody,
Say it.
nobody has done what we've done as a people, and nobody can beat us,
Say it.
even if they look like us.
It can't be.
It's
For real.
I ain't saying we better than nobody. I'm saying we special.
For real.
We different. You're special.
For real.
You're different. And part of why this is, part of why we wrote that law was to help make it easier for the government and the people who are going to be doing reparations to figure out who we are. Again, that's going to start in 2024, and it's going to start with the government employees first. There's probably about 2.5 million government employees next year that are going to start to see on their government forms, are you a descendant of someone who was enslaved in the United States? The U.S. Census, the big census, and y'all may have seen this in the past few months too, the U.S. Census is now considering adding that to the 2030 census to be able to say, I am a descendant of someone who was enslaved in the United States. And that's partly because of the work of the people doing work here in California and elsewhere too. So it's a very important piece. Again, to the question of how do you show that you are a descendant, to be determined. The state is going to set up a specific place for us to help do that. My goal is to make sure that, one, we don't have to do, again, yes, start gathering your records, start doing that anyway. I think you should want to do that anyway. Just to know who you are, know who your family is. I've been having conversations with my mother that we never had, because now we're talking about reparations, and now I'm asking her, okay, well, who's my uncle, and who's this, and what you know about my father, and et cetera, and she's giving me names, and so now we getting, it's actually helping us. We are getting close as a family. That's good, generally.
Yeah.
But I don't want us to have the burden of doing all that records running down ourselves, and I don't want us to have to pay for that either. So yes, do it for yourself, but there will be a specific space and a specific place set up just for this by the state reparations task force, or by the state after the recommendation of the task force. Okay, I got. Let me go. I'm gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm gonna go back here.
I just had to add on to that. So if somebody is biracial, how will that work? So if you have one African American parent, one somebody else, or even if you're like, 25%, how are they gonna distinguish that, and how is it?
Good
I
question.
think that's
So
gonna be quite a few.
yeah, it is. And actually, I had a sister.
My family.
Yeah, I had a sister who I met out. We did a reparations Q&A just for the youth in Elk Grove in March, and one of the parents of one of the kids that was there, she said, "Listen, I'm biracial. I'm also adopted too, but we'll come back to that. But one of my parents is black or African American, one is not. So am I in this?" And right now, generally speaking, as long as at least one of her ancestors, was enslaved somewhere in this country, and she obviously meets the residency, she would be eligible. The only, and I had to be honest with her about this too, the only thing that will give me pause and being very 100% sure is because, kind of what we were saying earlier, she told me that she doesn't identify as black or white. She identifies as biracial, or she doesn't pick one. Okay? So.
Don't get to pick one now.
So, so,
But see, that's what happens to the African American always. It's always somebody, something
Trying to infiltrate.
that causes us to
Right.
be a little
Culture.
short.
Mhm.
I mean, it's you know, it's
Nobody's fault.
It's nobody's fault. Thank you. It's a critical thing, you know, and I know it's difficult, but
yeah.
you know, then, you know, the dollars are gonna get split and split and split and split, you know, where does it stop?
Yeah.
That's the thing.
The truth about it is,
Where
though,
does
we
it
all
stop?
are watered down
Yeah.
Africans,
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
Our history is so messed up that our ancestors were raped and all of that stuff. And so, even though someone may be one white parent now, one black parent now, we all have some white person that violated one of our ancestors some time ago. So
1850.
So the.
So how does that work?
Yes, and that is to be determined, right? So the Office of Genealogy will set some rules, okay? Most likely, what we're calling CAFA, the California American Freedmen Affairs Agency, CAFA, CAFA, where the Office of Genealogy will be sat or done, will have to set some guidelines about, okay, how do you demonstrate, you know, do you have to self-identify as a certain particular race, and then also you have to have the descendancy and the residency too. So they're going to have to set those rules. The task force had generally said, though, that to be eligible, you have to have those two criteria. You have to be the descendant criteria, and you have to have the residency criteria. They haven't gone any further than that. They've given the rest of that work to the Office of Genealogy, to the agency. Potentially, though, and this is important too, when we were talking about earlier, to your question about what's next, we're gonna have to watch and make sure that the legislators don't take this out and away from where the task force wants it to. So the legislators can say, well, yeah, the task force wanted this descendancy and this residency, and we want to add this too, or we want to take this piece away too. We're gonna have to be very careful and watchful and active over the next 6 to 9 months to make sure that doesn't happen.
So
right?
so why was Barack denied then? Because his father.
Yeah, so his
So
father,
then-
so for Barack Obama, his father is from Kenya, his
Yeah.
mother's white.
Right, so his father had to be from America.
His father would have, or he would have to be a descendant of someone who was enslaved in
Chris, can I ask you,
America.
when your work, all the work that you're doing right now, you guys are doing right now, and you're going to different communities, when, you know, like, right now, I'm called for action, and I'm trying to discern when are we going to have to rise collectively and go and make a showing and do some
Yeah.
demonstrations as a whole body of
I'm glad you asked. I'm glad you asked.
When?
So,
I'm ready.
well, you can get active with us right now. Okay? So we are actively looking for and
We ready.
desiring and wanting volunteers. Okay, so like,
March.
so but more than March too.
I know.
So we have a spot on our volunteer role for you, right? But I'm gonna come back to that question too, because we do have some things that you can do now, like today and tomorrow.
Like
and,
call to action.
Right. So I'm gonna come back to that. I want to save that to the end, but I want to get to the next questions I had. I think it was sister here, and then I'm going to the back.
Already asked.
Okay. So I'm gonna go to.